Okay, does anybody know why it's called cheatgrass?
Yes.
Cheats everything else out.
Mm-hmm.
It gets a head start, and it's first one out.
Oh.
Yep,
It draws the
exactly.
nutrients from the natives.
So they can be treated out.
Yeah, it's the first one to set seed. It's really opportunistic. You can germinate fall, winter, or springtime, and it germinates multiple times a year in the same location. So this is really important consideration when you're managing cheatgrass. Also produces seed before native species. Up here, you're probably a few weeks away from it starting to drop seed. It's already turning orange on the front range, so it's probably going to happen soon. The real giveaway for cheatgrass when it's young and green and lush, like the picture down here on the left, that can be any grass, right? And so you pick it up, there's a few giveaways. So you pull it, if it pulls really easily, it's going to be an annual grass, right? Because perennials have got big root systems and they're hard to pull out of the ground once they're established. When they're that size, you can pull it up. Sometimes you can still see the seed head right here where the roots are growing out of. And if you're still not sure, then you pull the leaf and you put it up to the sun. And if you see a bunch of little hairs, that's cheatgrass.
The hairs are on the roots?
The leaves.
On the leaves?
On the leaves,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, good clarification. But I think the easiest way to tell is when everything else is dormant and it's green, it's probably cheatgrass. Or it's another invasive annual that you should be concerned about. And then once it does go to seed, you just got to wear socks and shorts and walk through the field and you'll know that it's cheatgrass because these will just stick to everything. So here's a little bit about the ecology. It's a winter annual grass like we just talked about, but it can germinate in the fall and spring also. It's just called a winter annual. It's very invasive. I just read a statistic in a paper that said it can spread 16% of what the infestation is the year before. So from year to year, it can grow 16% if left unmanaged. And it colonizes disturbed sites. So this is another really important key to prevention, keeping it from getting started on your property, but also to look for areas that could easily be colonized by cheatgrass. So this earthwork or overgrazing, anything that moves soil around and disrupts plant communities. The seeds are dispersed by animals, not so much by wind. They're pretty heavy seeds, so even on a windy day, they're not going to go too much further than where they're...
You haven't been to the winds up here. I'm hopeful that my house will stay.
Right.
The wind blows the animals.
Yeah, but it's only like this tall, so maybe there'll be an updraft. Move it. I guess with that bullet, what I'm getting at is it's going to move around in the environment. People, deer, other animals, dogs, they're the ones moving.
Tires.
Yeah, tires to some extent, like muddy tires, where mud's caked in the inside the tread.
The one thing about it doesn't like to compete with grass, with other grass. If you get other grass going, cheatgrass probably will disappear.
Yeah. Yep. And that's real key to management.
If it's mowed early, while it's in its infancy and it's young, do the seeds, well, they still mature. And
Yeah.
If
The
it's
plant
low,
might,
it doesn't have to turn brown before they turn or mature and be able to germinate?
Well, if it's got a flower head on it, it's gonna most likely
Even
mature.
It's
Yeah.
gotta keep- Lay it on the ground still. Gotta mature.
Mhm. And even if you're mowing, then the plants will just be shorter and still put
Still
out
has
seed.
seeds on the bottom. You know,
Yeah. The seed life is short. This is the good news. So with some of these plants, the seed bank can last for decades, but with these annual species, they only last for 4 to 6 years. This is the real trick to beating cheatgrass and removing it from your property, if that's what your goal is. If you want to get rid of it completely, then you manage it for 4 to 6 years until that seed bank's gone, and then you monitor. And it also increases fire frequency, severity, and extent. This year, I was walking through cheatgrass. It's probably the highest cheatgrass I've ever seen. It was this tall, down by the mouth of the Pooter. So, luckily it was on state land board. There's not any structures back there. It's pretty secluded, but I can see a lightning strike moving a fire through that cheatgrass group. And it's a list C noxious weed, therefore management's recommended. It's not mandatory. And I'm told that we are the only state in the United States that has listed it as a noxious weed at all, because it's so ubiquitous throughout the entire nation.
We consider it weed or grass?
Yeah, weed could be a grass or a tree, or pretty much anything. Growth style. So this is local right here. This is a great way to identify where your cheatgrass is right now you got really green everything, and so when it sets seed, it's going to brown out probably before everything else, and so then you'll get a good idea of how much you have on your property. This is an eagle's nest open space down the road, where we have been pretty successful with beating cheatgrass back. Okay, so for management purposes, minimize ground disturbance as much as possible on your property. Stop it from going to seed, and you can do this by hand pulling it. If you're really diligent, or if you only have a little bit on your property and you're highly vigilant, you can pull it. If it's got a seed head, a flower on it, then throw it in the trash. But if it doesn't, just throw it on the ground. Make sure you get the roots out of the ground. And then there's a few different herbicides that are effective on the cheatgrass. I only brought 3 in this presentation because some of the other options I'm not very experienced with, or I'm not a big fan of. So again, our goal is to exhaust that seed bank. You have to just keep hammering on it for 4 to 5 years, 6 years. It's possible to get rid of it, but it takes time and money. So you got to realize that you're in for battle for that long.
Hand-to-hand combat?
How did you manage the eagles? How you did that?
With herbicides.
Herbicides.
And then monitor when you see it come back. Make sure to treat it. Okay, so I brought 3 different herbicides that are effective on cheatgrass. The first one is glyphosate, which is the common name for Roundup. What I did not put in here that I should have for the first bullet is it is not selective. So if you spray glyphosate on it, something that's green, it's going to damage it or it's going to kill it. So timing is very critical when using it on cheatgrass. You wait until everything else is dormant and you get a day that's 40, 50 degrees 40, 50 degrees outside, and you go and you spray it with glyphosate. There's no residual, so every time it flushes, you're gonna have to retreat it if you want to use glyphosate. Now you're gonna get later in the spring when other stuff starts greening up and the cheatgrass is still germinating, and then it's kind of like, well, I wonder how much damage I'm going to do to my desirable vegetation. So the reason it's such a terrific treatment is because it doesn't have residual. The chemical adheres to soil particles, and then you can seed directly into it. See, there's no period of time that you have to wait to reseed. As you were saying, the best way to manage it is to have desirable, undisturbed vegetation there to compete with it. Is there any questions on glyphosate?
So 40 degrees, you say that it has 3 cycles that it germinates each season?
You know,
So-
it's dependent on precipitation.
Okay.
So if we get precipitation in the fall or in the winter or in the spring, it's always a crapshoot in Colorado. You don't have any clue when it's really going to happen. That's when it's going to germinate. Precip and then some warm weather.
Okay.
Yes.
There's so many kinds of Roundup you can get now, extended control and
Yeah.
super duper, and is it worth spending more money, do you think, or just the basic
No,
stuff?
no, it's not worth spending more money because what they're doing then is they're tank mixing it with other products like Amazopic. I think that's what their extended
Okay.
use herbicide is. There's so many generics of glyphosate out there. It's really a cheap herbicide to buy and use yourself.
It'll be 40 degrees about the time you get home.
Yeah.
Germination section.
Yeah, so maybe this isn't a good option for this elevation. So then our next option is Amazopic. This has been on the market for maybe 20 years, maybe a little bit longer, 25 years. And they figured out that it works really well as a pre-emergent, which for landowners that don't have a lot of experience as herbicide applicators, this is a really good thing. Because you don't have to worry about adding a surfactant. You don't have to wait until, we used to treat it when it was tillering, so like when it was, the leaves were splitting off of the plant and just got too technical. But now, if you treat it late July, early August, you know it's going to be in the ground before the cheatgrass germinates. The bad news is there's varying levels of control. In my experience, I've had really good results with plateau, but there's other people that say it's really hit or miss. I usually use it at a 5 to 6 ounce per acre rate, but calibrating your equipment is very critical because if you put on too much, other stuff's not going to grow, and if you put on too little, you just wasted your time and your effort and your money. The other positive of using Amazopic is it's got a range label. So if you have livestock, if you're grazing the property, you can use this product. Same with glyphosate. It's got a range label.
Excuse me, what's an example of a brand? You know, like we've heard of Roundup, I haven't heard of glyphosate. Is
Yeah.
there a name that-
For Amazopic,
Yeah.
Plateau
Oh.
is the major brand name. It's off patent now, so you can get generic Amazopics, which we sell at the office. Okay, we sell Amazopic. We don't sell glyphosate because we don't want to get into the more like landscaping, vegetation, maintenance realm. We want to stay on like pasture, open space, rangeland.
So if it has a range label, that means also that it's okay for wildlife?
Yes. I would consider it fine for wildlife. They don't, when they test these herbicides, they don't test it on wildlife.
Right.
You know, they test it on domestic animals.
The non-targets that you could affect with that, if it's too heavy, are they mostly grasses or any broadleaf stuff?
Everything, yeah.
Everything?
Cactus.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Cactus is hard to kill. It doesn't take in a lot of, it doesn't take in a lot of nutrients.
I like my cactus.
Oh, yeah. And with the Mazapic, it usually lasts for 8 to 12 months. I think, in my experience, I've gotten a good years of control. Now, if there's a lot of really good understory, desirable vegetation, I've treated it in some years just one time, and it doesn't come back. But in other areas, you treat it 1 year, and then in 4 or 5 years, it's back to where it was before.
That Mazapic, is that something where you could spray, like you say, in early August, and then come October, November, when we're starting to see some winter moisture, you could overseed it then with some native grasses? Would that interfere or appropriate? Yes?
You know, on the product label, it has a reseeding interval. I want to say it's longer than that, but I've heard from researchers that you can get away with planting into it. So, I mean, in that case, if that's something you're interested in, I would say do a small area, try it, and see if you get the results that you want, and if not, space it out. Yeah, so with all these products, if it sounds like something you're really interested in, get online or come in our office, get a product label, read through it, make sure you understand the proper ways to use it, mix it, the environmental constraints in using those products before you buy it, so that you're not surprised when you get home.
What are you mixing it with?
Water.
And using a backpack sprayer?
You can, yeah. The probably most even way to apply it with broadcast spraying, where you just kind of cover an area with something that has booms that spray at a certain speed and rate. Backpack sprayers, you know, if you calibrate multiple times, you're going to get a good sense of what you're putting out. That's why it's good to go with that slightly lower rate, because you're always putting on a little more, or at least I'm always putting on a little more than what I've calibrated it at. I've seen the opposite though too. Some people are really scared to do damage to everything, so they're putting it on lighter than what they calibrated it at. So calibration is key. That's really, really important. Yeah.
We do have handouts on how to calibrate. So if that sounds scary, we have documentation at the office.
Yeah.
In order to get the right mix, then you actually have to use like a syringe for a 3-gallon backpack sprayer. This is not like the Schwab system that we used to see. You really have to measure very carefully for most backpacks.
Yeah. What we got at the office are the squeeze bottles, and so there's a reservoir that's 1 ounce. If you can get calibrated to where your backpack's putting out 24 gallons to the acre, then it's pretty easy to convert it into ounces or half ounces per backpack. Yeah. But if you got any questions about that, give me a call when you're sitting down to calibrate, or if we can get enough people that are interested, we can just do a calibration clinic. Now, the last one is a new chemistry, or at least a new use for an old chemistry, and that's for Indaziflam. product name is Esplanade. This is another pre-emergent herbicide. You can tank mix this with glyphosate, so same with the Mazapic. If you're applying in the spring when there's a lot of emergence already and you want to kill what's up, you put the glyphosate in to kill what's growing already. You use the indaziflam or the Mazapic for everything that hasn't germinated yet. Now, what is great about this product is they're seeing 2 to 3 years of control at a time. So if you get a proper application and you would only have to do it twice before you exhaust that soil seed bank, maybe 3 times. However, it does not currently have a range label, so if you have animals that are grazing, you can't use it. They've applied to the EPA for a range label, but in my experience, it's anybody's guess when or if they'll get it. And it's also a higher cost per application. So with the generic Mazapic, you're probably looking at $15, $20 an acre, and this is upwards of $50 an acre for the herbicide.
How is it for non-target?
Good, really good. Yeah, because it's pre-emergent, anything that's a perennial plant is going to come back up. It'll suppress annual species, but a lot of the plants around here, the desirable species are they're perennials.
You sell that at the office?
We do not, because so many of our landowners have animals that they graze. This is somewhat of new technology that we're kind of, it sounds like it's going to be really good for this, but the research has only been going on for 3 or 4 years, and it's at higher cost. We just don't know if there's a market for it or not.
The deer count is 2010. We got lots of deer.
Right, yeah, she asked that same question, and I would say that it's probably safe to use with deer grazing, but that's not an animal that they screen these herbicides on. You know, they screen the toxicity on domestic animals. They don't screen them on elk or deer.
Well,
But
it
what-
may be fine for the mature, but it may impact any bonds, or there may be more stillbirths, or there may be abortion rate may be higher.
Yeah, and that's
So it may be
something.
fine for a mature animal, but maybe not for the developing animal.
It's really hard to say for me. I know they do go through rigorous testing on these herbicides in the laboratory when they're putting together those product labels. But like I said, they're not testing it on elk or deer that I know of.
Well, there's a reason why ranchers aren't going to use it on their cattle
Yeah.
until it's got a range label on it.
Right. Yeah.
So if ranchers aren't going to use it, there's a reason.
Yeah. Well, it's
They
also
don't want to take the risk.
that's an illegal use for these products. If they're not labeled for a specific use, like range, then you're breaking the law when you're applying them in those scenarios.
Okay. Don't the labels have somewhere in there, the part that says after a certain number of hours or whatever, the activity diminishes for any animal?
No, a lot of the labels have worker protection standards for agriculture. So they have re-entry intervals where workers are not supposed to re-enter those places until like 24, 48 hours later. But those are in these systems where they're crop dusting hundreds of acres at a time. In range and open space herbicide application, it's usually says in the label, just wait until it's dry. Stay out of the area until it's dry. If you don't have the proper PPE on.
Do you have a time of year that you recommend this one?
Yeah, so this one, the best research results that they've gotten is in December.
Really?
Yeah, and so that's why they're tank mixing it with glyphosate, is because there's some that's already up.
Huh.
I think if you applied it at the same time as the imazapic in August, your first year, from what we've seen, the first year doesn't look great. You get kind of mixed results, but then year 2 and 3, they look really good. So that's why I left out a treatment window. I think if you do it between August and March, you're probably going to get pretty good results. See, the scientists, when they're researching the efficacy on these, they're nitpicking between like 85%, 90%, 95%, 98% control. For landowners, I think it's more important that you're mixing and loading correctly, that you're calibrating your instruments. I think that's where a lot of the mistakes can happen. Yeah, so that's all I brought for cheatgrass. We could keep talking about it if you got more questions.
Casey, I'm pulling it up. Did you say it should be easy to pull?
Yes.
No.
Should be easy. Yeah, it should be real easy.
Okay.
Even in dry ground, it should be easy to pull out. But if you find another bunch grass, it doesn't even budge if it's a perennial.
So can you mow it? I mean, do you try to mow cheatgrass before it develops the seed beds, or?
Spreads the seeds.
Yeah, you would think that if it's already developed
And it's
seed
still going
beds.
to put the seeds out. You might be reducing some of that fire risk by mowing it, by reducing the fuel on the ground.
I think what you can do is allow some of the native grass to get a start by cutting through. I've had a lot doing that.
Yeah,
Some
sometimes.
of the native can come in and the cheatgrass is less covered.
Right, I've done that with other exotic annuals where we'll mow at a certain time of year when we know that the understory is going to be growing to try to encourage those plants.
Perennials.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty quick.
So yeah,
Shelf life of plateaus.
Yeah, it begins to lose efficacy after I think about 3 years. And slowly at first and then more so over time. It's important to store it above freezing. So if you have don't just throw it in your shed over the winter and let it freeze and then de-thaw, because then you're probably wasting your time. I'm all about just maximizing landowners' time and making sure that they get the best. Because you could be out there every single day of the week for the entire summer doing something. For weed control, it's just finding the right windows where you're maximizing that effort.
so what about the revegetating or trying to get the more native grasses to grow? Is that best done before the first snow, or?
Yeah, up
fall?
here I would say if you could plant between October and Mother's Day in May, it's a pretty big window.
Okay.
And then that way you can take advantage of some of the spring and winter precip. I like doing it in spring. A lot of people will say do it in fall, but in spring I feel like you don't lose as much seed to wind and herbivory.
Birds.
Birds, yeah, exactly.
Do you guys sell seed?
We do not, but we have a list of seed distributors on our website. And if you ever want to just run a seed mix by me, make sure there's no bad stuff in there that you're bringing in, feel free to email it to me. I can just take a peek.
the seed distributors that you have recommended, I assume they all know what's appropriate and what grows well where.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. They sell some stuff that I wouldn't ever put in seed mix because I've seen how invasive it is. But it grows and it greens and it establishes quickly. And if that's your goal, just to grow grass as fast as you can, then
Just smooth ground.
yeah, yeah.
So
I'm thinking of feral annual rye, which is it's just like that's what carried the picnic rock fire. It's this annual grass that gets this big and it's just really dense and it's awful. It's harder to control than cheatgrass, but I still see it in seed mixes as a nurse crop.
So what about those sections that are disturbed earth, either for construction or roads or something? Do you have a particular seed that you think is the best to get something started anyway?
Yeah, there's some native perennial species that shoot out of the ground pretty quickly. Some of it's going to be dependent on soil. You know, if you're just stripping a bunch of soil, or if you bring in topsoil that was like it was filled, that was in somebody's basement, and it might not grow very well. So the soil's important. You got to limit compaction, but then Canada wild rye, slender wheatgrass, blue grama, Sido's grama, those 4 native species grow excellent, really quickly.
So, I'm Dan Barber, I'm actually your ecology committee chair, and we do have several brochures in the office. There's a whole range of things if you walk in the office and around the corner. I believe we have one that is about if you have disturbed earth and you want to replant, there's some recommendations for seeds. So do check out what we do have in the office. And Ted Salmon back there is our noxious weed and native plant expert. So for our committee.
Noxious, you said?
I didn't say anything. I reserve that for myself. But we do have lots of resources. You can always call the office and somebody in the office can point you to us and we can help you out.